folks. Why Would You Ask That is a podcast that answers some of the weirdest questions. A lot of those are inappropriate for some listeners. If you're squeamish, easily disturbed, or just having a bad day, this may not be for you. But if you've got to know the answers like we do, stay tuned.
Why Would You Ask That? Hosted by me, they, them, and
Karen, she, her, and
Remy, he, they.
Today we have something totally not disgusting to talk about, and it is weird food shit in the last 100 years in the United States. We're gonna be focused primarily on, but let's let Remy take it away, huh? Get this shit out of my mouth.
Yeah, I don't understand what's happening. What are we talking about?
We're talking about a light topic today. We're talking about food history in the United States, primarily because there's too much if I talk about other places.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily between the period of the 1930s to the 1970s, because that's already a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
So much.
I'm wondering about all the gadgets that were developed between the 1930s and the 1970s. Because I know that they sell them at the antique places, because my dad is always like, ooh, look at this, and then send me a picture, or he'll tell me about it, and he'll be like, yeah, and they use this to do this stuff, and I'm like, it's so specific.
As if we don't have specificity.
Yeah.
My mother used to love to buy kitchen gadgets that we never used.
Yeah, we had a phase of that too, and then we were like, oh, there's no room in our cabinets anymore.
Yeah, we had an able skiver for a while.
Oh, what? Describe it.
Hold on. You know those those pans with the round holes in them?
Oh, bunt pans.
No.
Oh.
You've seen pans kind of like that for making takoyaki.
Takoyaki, yeah. And they were saying like, oh, these are like donut hole, pans.
A pan with a hole in the middle, but not a bunt pan.
No, they have like a bunch of little holes, like little balls, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, here, I'm gonna send you guys a picture.
Thank you.
It's a round pan with a bunch of like round indentations in it that you make like these filled little mini pancakes, Nordic pancakes.
Oh, okay, this is cute.
Yeah, so I believe the pan itself is called an able skiver, so I'm not really sure anymore.
I have no idea what it's called.
Able skiver.
Able skiver. We're just going to take your word for it.
Like when... An able skiver pan, I guess. The able skiver is the pastry, and the able skiver pan makes it. The able skiver, okay. The able skiver is the pancake with the nice stuff in the middle. But you could also use this shit to make takoyaki.
You can buy one of these on Amazon if you just type in mini pancake pan.
Mini pancake pan.
Say what now? I've only ever known it with the one name.
I typed into Google pan for making lots of little pancakes.
I'm sitting here just like, able skiver. You know.
And the first thing that came up was Swedish pancake pan, and the next thing was mini pancake pan.
They're Danish or Swedish. They're somewhere in the Nordic region, okay? Good golly goodness. Anyway, we never made them correctly.
Oh.
And we just had it.
Oh my god, you could buy these with, like, designs on them.
They're very cute, and I thought about getting one so I could try to make takoyaki.
Oh, okay. Able skiver. That is what they're called. I've proven you right.
Yes, good.
Way to go.
You're not crazy.
I work sometimes.
I was trying to find it under that name, but I didn't know how to spell it. There you go.
Nice.
They're not that expensive.
No, they're pretty cheap now. So, but back then, when it was one of those TV commercials, where you guys remember TV commercials where they just try to sell you like literally everything, like this could pit cherries, this could pit different kinds of cherries. This one shreds an apple in 0.054 seconds.
Yeah.
This one instantly dices your potatoes and your onions.
OxyClean.
The OxyClean guy was
ShamWow.
ShamWow, that guy.
Sham fucking wow.
Didn't get in trouble for something, I swear.
The OxyClean guy did. He was yeah.
I thought he just died.
No, I think he was like, he did die, but I think he was like addicted to heroin. So weird food things from the 30s and on.
Karen, before we got so distracted, you said, I wonder what kind of gadgets were invented during that time period. Yeah, probably a lot. So just looking at this list of gadgets that were invented during that time period, like in the 1920s, the KitchenAid came out with like the stand mixer. So that's slightly before the Great Depression happened. There was here's a picture of a kitchen ad from the 1920s. Let me give you that link to look at it.
Kitchen. Yeah, that looks like something I would find in an old magazine.
We got, in the 1930s, electronic blenders happened. Electric ovens happened in the 30s. Refrigerators in the late 30s, 40s. Tupperware in the 40s. Speed peelers. So like the ones with the little wheels on the side that like go and like wheel that wheel as you're peeling them instead of like being stiff. Automatic kettle in the 50s, dishwashers in the 50s.
The machine does the work.
Yeah, where the machine is doing more of the work than you are. Dishwashers in the 50s, deep fat fryers in the 50s, non-stick pans in the 50s, which we have recently learned that the stuff on the non-stick pans can be really bad for you, if you didn't hear. So,
which one, the Teflon coating?
Yeah.
I just assume that everything is bad for me at this point.
The Teflon can cause liver cancer.
Oh, great. Well, here we are.
Hurry up and cure cancer, seriously, because we did too much shit. We played around way too much.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So we got pressure cookers in the 1960s, the microwave in the 1960s. There was an item called Teas Made in the 1960s. I'll show you a picture of it. We don't have these anymore, I guess.
Is it a kettle? Just kidding.
Makes tea.
It makes tea. Oh my god.
You can see it on the little sign underneath it.
Oh,
Goblin.
So little.
Goblin makes tea, lights the lamp, wakes you up, tells the time.
Yeah,
I'm in it.
That's actually kind of cool. Can I have that?
It does everything. The description for it says the need for speed and ease continued right through the decade, and Teas Made was another company that thrived in the 60s. Their automatic tea-making machine, which included a settable clock for hot beverages on demand, was a cult product in the 1960s and into the 70s. And then apparently a bunch of other companies made these too, and they're just not around anymore. And then we hit the 70s, and it doesn't matter anymore what was made because we're going to stop talking about food at that point.
This reminds me of the kind of thing that American pickers would be like all over. They're like, oh, look at this. Oh my god, look at that. And then the music gets real intense and then it cuts to commercial.
These kinds of ice boxes were made, these like standalone icebox things.
Cute.
We've got, here's these kind of like refrigerators. Whoop, I clicked on the wrong tab. Whoop. This was the Westinghouse refrigerator of 1932. It's a dual automatic refrigerator. It features rolling shelves and built-in crisping pans for vegetables, it says.
That sounds nice.
It says that the thing on top is not the freezer. It's an enclosed compressor.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and it has interior lighting. It costs $180 of the 1930s money.
Of
Wow.
1930s money? Oh,
Yeah,
jeez. Yeah.
How much is that in 2020's money?
it's something about around 3,000 some odd dollars.
That's a lot. But you know what?
Right.
We've
Makes
got
sense.
we've got all steel refrigerators in this picture here.
Ooh.
Reduces prices.
That was also 1930s, $187.
Mm.
Yeah, Frigidaire started making refrigerators.
People were telling me at work how Frigidaire was like used basically like how we say Kleenex or Band-Aid is just colloquially known as that's what you just call the fridge.
Oh. Oh, and is that why it's called a fridge? No, because it's refrigerator. Excuse me.
This is a gas stove from 1932.
Cute.
This version of the gas stove features an automatic button, which is why it's fancy for the 1930s. You didn't
Ooh.
even need to light the match. It just automatically did it for you.
Whoa. I know that these things were probably super dangerous, but look
I'm,
how cute they are.
I'm certain that it was super dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And then here's an electric
Still have
stove ad.
She's about to put. She's living the life that everyone wants to lead in that just putting your hand on the stove.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And the ad is
Please don't put your
saying
hand on the stove.
the ad is saying this is going to be way cleaner than a gas stove.
Would your range pass the white glove test?
We got this very weird looking toaster. I'm going to put literally so many images up on our resource page.
Yeah, y'all
Love
get to
it.
see this. Don't you worry. Like, it is just like Remy's just feeding us this shit. That toaster looks like a grater.
It
Toaster
says
looks like a cheese grater.
Hot Point Toaster Deluxe. It is a very deluxe toaster. It looks like a very like Art Deco. Also, the thing on the side kind of looks like Art Deco penis.
It does look like a penis. You're
Art Deco
absolutely
penis.
correct.
Thank you.
Art Deco penis.
Save some bookmarks real quick.
Makes me think of in a show that I watch. They're like, you see penises in everything. And she's like, they follow me everywhere. Like, it's me.
So yeah,
I
there
can't help
were
it.
We're a phallocentric society.
We are.
sure. So there were so many inventions for the kitchen during this chunk of time, which is notable in and of itself, but not why we're talking about food.
Is there any reason why, do you think?
Why we're talking about food?
No, why kitchen gadgets became such a big thing?
During that chunk of time, there was a lot of stuff that was invented anyway. I think some of it largely had to do with because there was a lot of manufacturing going on at the time in general. We made a lot of stuff for the war, and I think they repurposed some things into just regular stuff. But in any case, that chunk of our like country's history had a lot of boom going on. We just had a lot of rapid technological growth in general. In other areas, like we also got like the TV during the 50s. Like people went through like a bunch of different types of like music playing devices like very rapidly in the course of 2 decades.
Yeah.
If you look at the 90s, just like for us, we've gone through like 15 different gaming systems in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that's true. And
Still
in the
not
90s
satisfied.
alone, we went through cassettes, CDs, iPods. iPods were about the thousands, I guess, but
in my life, like my cell phone range, I just missed the cutoff for the first handheld cell phones that didn't go in cars.
that's amazing.
Because we looked it up. So there was like five personal cell phones before the type of cell phone that I had. My first cell phone when I was 15 was when I got my first cell phone. But there were only like 5 of them before that, and they were ridiculously expensive, like in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
I remember
And it
mine.
did,
I got a Nokia,
I also had a Nokia.
the bomb.
There was a
I think
bunch
I had
of,
a
like, not a
Samsung.
bunch. There were several types of Nokias, and mine was that teeny little blue one that you could throw really hard against the pavement and it would bounce and you could pick it up and keep using it.
It's like all Nokias from that time.
These things are really expensive now. Oh, mine was, I guess it wasn't blue. It's black. I'm misremembering.
It had like a little case with a dragon on it. I loved that phone.
My first phone was a slide. Oh man, you had the kind of phone my dad had.
I had one of these.
Aww.
Yep. And these things weren't cheap either. So,
No.
yeah,
Oh man.
these are
Now I gotta find mine.
Nokia 6100. Yeah. These are like they're not that far from like the first couple of cell phones. So that was just my lifetime. And I was 15 when I got this one because we were poor people, so I couldn't get one. This was a gift, so I got it secondhand even. Because they were very expensive still when I got them at 15. And then I got a Razor, which are coming back in style.
Yeah, the razors were. My mom had a pearl pink one. I was obsessed. This is the kind of phone that I had, but the buttons were all like touch. They were all like they weren't buttons. They were just like touch.
My friend
Had
Sarah had one of these, but the buttons were buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Basic.
I think it was. I used to like to just flip it open really fast. Now I realize it was probably very delicate on that hinge, and I shouldn't have been doing that. But
Oh man. Here it
uh,
is. The pearl pink.
I
This
just
is what I based my whole aesthetic on is the
well,
pearl pink Motorola Razor. Look
oh
at
yeah,
that.
You still base your aesthetic on that.
Exactly. I'm like,
yeah.
look at it. It's beautiful.
It's gamer girl now.
Yeah.
This is what I had, except mine was, you could probably guess, black. Man, we talk about this stuff at work sometimes, me and all the other old people. And uh, then all the people who are like 20 years old in there don't know what we're talking about. And my children asked me what a
Oh,
VHS was the other day, and I died a little. I
oh
shriveled.
God. Like, thanks. Thanks for that.
My older one
Oh, Jesus.
came out and was like, what's a VHS? Like holding a book. And I was like, just don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Don't talk to me.
Your
They
age rushed empathy. Like,
Yeah. Sometimes they can't grasp that we can't skip the commercials when we're at grandma's house because we've never had TV with commercials, because why would I pay that much for TV with commercials when I can pay way less just to have Netflix?
Yep.
And so they've just never had it. And we go to Mimi's house and they're like, let's watch SpongeBob. And I was like, if it's on, I can't make it be SpongeBob. I can't do that here. SpongeBob will
We
come
do
on.
not have that power.
If SpongeBob is on or whatever, they'll go watch it. They'll come and get me when the commercials come on and go, can you skip the commercials? I'm like, I can't. I'm so sorry. You only got to watch 2 minutes of your show. But now you have to sit through the next 10 minutes worth of commercials until it comes back on. And I'm sorry about it, but that's how it is here.
Yep. This is the second phone that I got, is the slide, a different type of slide, which was way better because then I could actually text. That was when texting got really big.
I hated texting. It's got better, like smartphone era.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like using T9s, and then the buttons hurt my hands.
Yeah.
Man. So there's just been a lot of rapid developmental boom throughout a lot of decades over the last 100 years. Food and the things that like we make food with has really not been that much different. But food is shaped by the historical events that we've gone through. So I wanted to talk about the 30s through the 50s because our country went through some like big food changes during that chunk of time, precipitated by the big things that were going on with our country at the time. And I wanted to talk about Jell-O food. And to talk about Jell-O food, I needed to talk about the Great Depression.
All right.
So, the Depression sets a divide between the eating habits of the 19th century and the modern nutrition consciousness of the 20th century. It's literally like a line between the way people used to eat food and the way people eat food now.
Oh, jeez.
So, the way that people started eating food during the Great Depression, it affects the way we're still eating food because we've carried over like an enormous amount of practices that we picked up from the Great Depression, like caring about the nutritional value of the food that we consume.
What?
The Great Depression is when we begin to think about food as being part of food groups and caring about the food groups in terms of the vitamins, minerals, and nutritional value of the food and evaluating food on that basis.
Oh, because we had to really like ration food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, starting in about 1929, the Great Depression began a period of food scarcity that made it so that being frugal and practical outweighed whether you had like cultural tastes or whatever you preferred, and instead people gravitated toward whatever would be filling and easily accessible. And culinary science was like a just growing field at that time, so there was a push in that area on products that would meet newly developed nutritional needs and be high in calories. There's a book that I'll put on our resource page called Square Meal: A Culinary History of the Great Depression by two historians named Andrew Coe and Jane Ziegelman. And in their book, they talk about how milk became a really prominent part of our culinary culture at that time because it was seen as a quote unquote complete food because it has proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and sugar for energy. And so it shows up in like a bunch of recipes from that time period.
Mm.
Rip to all
I mean,
the lactose intolerant bros.
Sorry about it. The attitude. There's a sauce that they made that was like a white sauce, and the base was milk and flour, like a roux, basically, and it went on everything.
Mm. Gravy?
It's not a gravy.
Oh. Mm.
I was reading the recipe, and it was like milk and flour, but then it had other things in it that I don't remember off the top of my head, and I didn't leave pulled up. And then they poured it on top of everything. Spaghetti, toast, just everything. Like the recipe for spaghetti I read said that like we cook spaghetti for like 7 to 9 minutes, depending on what your stove is doing. And then you put like your red sauce or white sauce or whatever on top of it, like your Alfredo. But this was like sort of a gravy, like sort of a white gravy.
Mm.
And then you would cook your spaghetti noodles for like 20 minutes.
Oof.
And then pour the gravy on it.
Mm.
And then you would mix them all together. And then you would put like beans or something in there for protein. And then you would put that in a casserole dish, and then you would cook it for some more. And then when you got done, it would be like this sloppy, messy, gross mess. But you would eat it because it had like a bunch of minerals and protein in it.
I really don't like that, but I understand. I understand why they had to do it and why they thought it was important. It's just, you know, it's kind of like how I imagine like future food is going to be, where it does not look appetizing, but it doesn't matter because it has all of the nutrients that you need. And you just like eat this square bar and you're just like, well.
Oh, we already have that. It's called Calorie Mate, bro.
I mean, this is like a joke you're making, but also a point that I make further down in my notes. So,
oh, great. I mean, part of me is like, hell yeah, I don't want to just like, oh, it's like that. Yeah, you know, I think I've had that.
This is
Not
cream
that
chipped beef.
Yeah. Sorry, my grandma grew up in the Great Depression, so I feel like I've had that. Like she's made something with that before. I can't remember because most of the food she made was you know, eggs, bacon, and uh, the number one thing that she like, the number one thing that like was the recipe that was passed down to me was the eclair cake, which is on the Jell-O packs, like the pudding packs.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really off topic. But yes, I feel like I've had that before.
Yeah. So, the Great Depression also gave one of the largest food brands to us. So, that being General Foods Corporation, and we know them since the 90s as Kraft Foods.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was
So,
just going to say, it's
yeah,
Kraft, right?
it is Kraft. So, in 1914, the company, oh, sorry, I wrote my sentence wrong. So, in the 1800s, it was started with C.W. Post with just a cereal. And then when he died in 1914, his daughter Marjorie took over. And she was a really good businesswoman and just expanded their corporation. And so in the years leading up to the Depression, she acquired for the company Jell-O, Maxwell House Coffee, Minute Tapioca, Swan's Down Flour, which I have a box of in my kitchen, Franklin Baker Coconut, Walter Baker Chocolate, and then in 1929, the year of the Great Depression, Bird's Eye Frozen Food, which is the frozen food brand that I buy when I want it.
Right.
That's where I buy my
Yeah. On the one hand, boo capitalism. On the other hand, you go, girl.
Yeah. It's
Sorry.
not like 1914 is a year that a lot of women were able to do a lot of huge business operating.
Yeah.
So, the mass production of convenience products like powdered coffee and Jell-O mix and instant tapioca and flour and stuff were easily accessible to most families, and because of how the products were packaged, they had a long shelf life. Canned foods and jarred foods and powdered foods and dry goods and stuff like that that could be preserved for a long time became really essential during the Great Depression. And so, of course, at the start of the Great Depression, advances in home refrigeration, as we literally just talked about a minute ago, were such that most people finally had a refrigerator in their house or could get one within those years. So they stocked up on things like Bird's Eye frozen veggies, or they could make Jell-O in their fridge. So home refrigeration also made it possible for people to eat ice cream, which was also a very popular treat during the Depression. In fact, candy in general, and particularly chocolate and chocolate bars, were marketed as a suitable meal replacement.
Oh
So
no.
some were named Chicken Dinner or Denver Sandwich, which helped to market them as a full and nourishing meal to people. And then other candy bars were named things like Payday and Fifth Avenue because they were meant to make you laugh.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, the payday. I mean,
yeah,
that one is that's actually really full of protein because it's peanuts.
it's packed full of peanuts. They're very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's a lot of sugar, but also a lot of protein. So it's still not good for you, but you know, it's healthier for you than say a chocolate bar.
And then ice cream, which I just said was a very popular treat. The ice cream Rocky Road was particularly popular during this time and was named at the start of the Great Depression when the markets crashed. Also intended to
Oh.
make you have a laugh because everybody was going down a rocky road together.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that. That's kind of sweet, actually. It's like, yeah, we're all
we're
fucked
all
together,
in
but
this together.
there.
Yeah,
But here, have a rocky road.
yeah. So I had just like a list of some foods that they were just sort of consuming. Some people, all people. There's just a general list of foods that were just consumed in the population. So we got like milk toast, which is what it sounds like. Uh yeah.
That's me.
You got chipped beef on toast, which is the picture that I sent, which has got that white sauce with chips of beef on top of toast. Cucumber and mustard sandwich.
Oh
Mayonnaise sandwich.
no.
So this is something that you would eat because the bread has a lot of nutrients that you need, and then the mayonnaise has a lot of fat that you need. So
Yeah.
between the two of them, you're getting a lot of nutrients and calories, even if you're not getting protein.
Yeah, there's nothing else. It's just mayonnaise and bread.
Yeah, meat was really hard to come by. So if you can't hunt
Mm,
for your own meat, and if you can't buy your own meat, and you can't find other protein to eat, like beans or anything, then you're just gonna have to eat stuff without the meat.
wow.
As a
Fair.
matter of Yeah, me too. As a matter of fact, when I was reading about what other countries were doing before deciding there was too much to talk about in the United States, one of the things that I read from England during World War II was a type of bread where they substituted one of the ingredients with sawdust because they didn't have enough wheat.
I have heard of that.
Yeah. So it was
It's
like, yeah, so it was like a third of a cup of like wheat and then a third of a cup of sawdust and then the rest of the ingredients. And then they
mm,
just baked it and ate it.
yep.
Yeah, so ketchup sandwiches, lard sandwiches, bacon grease sandwiches, sugar sandwiches, onion sandwiches, butter and sugar sandwiches. It
Well,
just kind of keeps going.
sandwiches.
Fried potato peel sandwiches, tomato sandwiches, American cheese sandwiches, because the American cheese that Kraft makes now was made during this time period because it was cheap to make and did not require refrigeration.
Mm, yep. There you go.
Meat that people would like find to eat that you could like kill around your house: turtle,
Oh,
gopher,
oh.
roadkill, squirrel, like whatever fish that you could find in your general area. Chicken feet, because you want to eat more of the chicken than just the meat if you can. Chicken feet people eat in other countries around the world. This just sounds weird to us in the US who don't generally consume that part of the chicken. Yeah, you can get it at the store, but like in the United States, it's not a commonly consumed portion of the chicken in most communities. But
But ever wants me to attempt to try to cook with chicken feet.
yeah, it's
I
like,
wouldn't know.
yeah, I wouldn't mind trying it either. From what I have seen from yeah, you do this for our next YouTube video.
Oh, okay.
For our I'm on one of the eating shows that I used to watch. I think it's off the air now. He went to one of the Southeast Asian countries where they eat like rooster feet, and he said it was super good. So I was like, oh, I'd try it.
Hmm.
Andrew Zimmerman or Anthony Bourdain?
Andrew Zimmerman,
Ah,
that guy.
yeah, Zimmer.
I don't think I've ever watched anything by Anthony Bourdain, but I heard it's good. All of his stuff. Um, yeah, and then deep fried chicken skin just by itself without the meat.
I mean, that does sound good.
I mean, it is
Ooh.
good.
Yeah.
You got potato soup, which I enjoy. Dandelion green salad, which people have been doing recently of their own volition. Like foraging is coming into like a popular trend area, and so people are like going back to trying to eat things like dandelions because they are edible and good for you.
Hmm.
But then it was just a necessity. Bean soup, something called rag soup that's spinach broth and a lot of macaroni.
Huh.
Yeah. The list is very
I
long,
love
so
to taste like rags.
I'm just gonna link the whole list onto our website. But yeah, it's very long. But that's part of it. And then we kept a couple of foods from then, like people eating grapefruit. Grapefruit stayed from then because it was not widely eaten before the Depression, unless you were like on like the very poverty end of the spectrum, and then everybody sort of got leveled out when the Depression happened, and now a lot of people eat grapefruit.
What? Wait, grapefruit was considered like poverty?
Not widely
Something?
eaten before let me read the actual quote. Not widely eaten before it was provided as part of public assistance in the 1930s. Grapefruit fulfilled the nutritional requirements of vitamin C and was at first only begrudgingly accepted as an edible fruit.
Wow. I mean, I agree it's not my favorite citrus, but huh,
Yep.
interesting. I just had
Uh,
no idea. I mean, I don't know. Is it cheaper to? I guess it's cheaper to produce grapefruit.
I don't know if it's cheaper. It's just a good source of vitamin C. Recipes called for boiling it.
Oh,
I mean, you could make jam from it, I guess. But
I don't
boiled
like grapefruit.
grapefruit. Yeah, no. I mean, I put up with it, but also it's bad for people with uh for people who take birth control.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that it inhibits some of the enzymes, or I don't know, whatever the scientific term is, but it inhibits them from uh, interacting with the body to
Oh,
prevent. Yeah, it like
I googled
inhibits
it.
the. Okay, yeah, it inhibits the birth control from doing its job, essentially.
It says theoretically, consuming grapefruit with birth control pills might increase the estrogen levels in your blood.
There you go. That's it.
It says this shouldn't lower the effectiveness of your birth control, but it might increase the chances for side effects.
Yep. I just know that people have said, don't eat grapefruit if you're taking birth control. And I'm like, I
Oh,
mean, it wasn't really something I was gonna eat, but
thanks. I wasn't
okay.
gonna. Yeah.
But now you got me curious.
All right. So casseroles. Yeah. It says they were an invention of necessity, just shoving a bunch of
Mhm.
ingredients into a pan and eating them. Chicken and dumplings.
Ooh, that's a good one.
No bake pies. Fried egg sandwiches. Hamburgers.
Mm.
It says fast food did exist before the market crash. Fast food chains thrived during the Depression, though, because burgers are cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Broccoli.
Broccoli.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if one of you were going to question it.
I mean, I figured that broccoli was always popular, but like, was it not before?
It says searching for ways to increase profit, Japanese farmers in California in 1930 started cultivating a crop imported from Italy, which most Americans had never heard of before, broccoli.
Broccoli. Oh,
So before
Yeah,
welcome.
it's
then,
one of my
yeah,
favorite.
welcome. So before then, it was not commercially grown in the US.
Aw, wow. I had no
Welcome
idea.
to the world,
You're
broccoli.
welcome. Well, welcome to America. It was in the
Welcome to the
world before
world,
that.
broccoli American Smith.
And baked apples.
Ah, yeah.
So from there, we went into World War II, and I don't have as much to say about World War II. It just came right after the Great Depression, really. Our food culture had already been altered by more nutritional value consciousness and paying attention to what can be stored for long periods and primed to ration. And then we needed that in the 40s when the U.S. entered World War II. The government began rationing certain foods in May of 1942, starting with sugar. And then coffee was added to the list in November, and then that was followed by meats, fats, canned fish, cheese, and canned milk in March. And of course, we were rationing other things too, like products, like tires were, I think, the very first thing that got rationed before food. But but then we also rationed like hosiery, like nylon and things like that too. But we're focused on the food.
Yo.
I had a little picture of ration stamps. My grandma still has some of her family's ration stamps saved in our family book.
Oh, cool. Dang.
For ration book.
Yeah, she was going through the photo album the other day with me, and she pulled some out of one of the little sleeves and said, "This is my dad's ration stamps." And I was like, "Ah, cool."
Yeah. Neat.
She showed them to me with his draft card.
Wow.
It's weird to think that this isn't like extremely long ago. It's only 100 years.
It is not extremely long ago.
I have my two sides of the family were opposite ends of World War II. Not like opposite sides, but opposite ends on the US side. Like my mom's dad, he was in the Navy. He was like submarine, like literally the story that he told us was that he was in a submarine and they literally had to hold their breath as an enemy submarine moved right over them. Like they're like the system that they had was so good that it could pick up their breath. I guess I don't know, but or maybe he was just holding his breath because you know
Because it's
your
scary.
butt's clenched.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my god, we're gonna get blown up. But yeah, he was like, yeah. So he was on the one end, and then there was my dad's dad who, to avoid having to work for all of that, he I think to avoid the draft, he he signed up to work somewhere, and then they were like, that was it. Okay, sorry. So my grandpa on my dad's side, he's a pipe fitter. He was a pipe fitter, and they were saying, okay, because of the war effort, we're going to have to ship you off to California. And, he's from Virginia. So he was like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. So he left to go work somewhere else. And then basically what happened is he just ended up getting shipped to California anyway. So he was like, God damn it. And so, yeah, my grandma, they stayed in Virginia and he was off in California. So my grandma I think she had all of the kids at that point. Yeah. My dad's the baby. So I think that he was at least a baby at that point. So.
I forget that your dad's old.
Yeah. 1947. The very end of it, because my dad was born, his birthday is December 30th. So, literally.
Damn, he really just
Yeah.
You hear that, Karen's dad? Amazing.
He is amazing. I love my dad.
So, newspapers, home economic classes, and government organizations offered all sorts of tips to help families stretch their ration points and have as much variety in their meals as possible. And propaganda posters urged Americans to plant quote unquote victory gardens and can their own vegetables to help free up more factory processed foods for use by the military. So restaurants instituted a bunch of meatless menus because there wasn't enough meat on certain days and to help conserve the nation's meat supply. And advertisers offered recipes for meatless dinners, like something called walnut cheese patties.
What?
And creamed eggs over pancakes.
What?
Yeah.
What is it made of? Eggs. Yeah, but egg is a meat. Egg is meat, right?
I don't really consider it meat personally.
It's not the same, but it's still an animal product.
But it's not meat.
Yeah.
It's not made out of meat. It's like saying period blood's made out of meat.
Oh, no, it's not. That's not the same. It's not the same. Oh my God, is it the same? No.
May as well be.
Okay. I always think it's interesting because, the fact that meat is always, the first thing to start removing from the diet whenever war is happening, it really kind of shows the human dependency on meat products when, we don't necessarily need to eat meat. It's just we need the certain things that meat can provide for us. So I don't know. I think it's hilarious because the number one thing that happens in all horror genres is that, it's wartime, the meat's gone. So rather than turning to a vegetarian vegan lifestyle, they just resort to cannibalism. I'm like, all right, guys, hang on a minute.
Why is this your first step?
I get it because a lot of the times it's well, nothing grows. That's an extra step. That's an extra layer for horror is the environment is destroyed. So you can't even grow anything for a vegetarian vegan lifestyle. It's just damn. I don't know. I don't know if that had anything to do with what we're talking about, but I just thought about it.
So the rationing for eggs was you could get 2 eggs a week. So they could make an egg on top of a pancake to have your protein. And it didn't count as meat, I guess. I don't think of it as a meat. I guess I don't know. I don't know if it's classed as a meat or not. I've never thought about it.
I feel like in the food pyramid, it fits under the meat category.
Okay, I googled
But
it.
it's not
The bottom
flesh.
line: eggs are not meat. It says.
Yeah,
Ah, what are they?
eggs.
It says eggs are not meat. There's no animal flesh in eggs, so they're not meat.
So they're just different. I guess kind of like how caviar is not fish.
It's
It's just
egg.
fish flavored.
Bro.
What is egg?
What is egg? Which came first?
Egg is egg, bro.
It's its own category.
Okay, the USDA categorizes eggs as an animal product and puts them in the protein food group, but they're not classified as meat. The protein food group says, quote, all foods made from meat, poultry, seafood, beans, peas, eggs, processed soy products, nuts, and seeds. So yeah, it's just part of the protein group, but not meat. In the same way that seafood is not meat, and beans and peas are not meat, and soy products are not meat.
Boom.
Wait. So you said seafood?
Yeah, seafood doesn't count as meat. Fish don't count as meat.
Okay. I don't understand that because it's flesh.
I've never understood it either, but they don't classify it as meat. I'm with you on that argument.
Nah, fish is different. Seafood's different. I'm in agreement with the FDA on this one. For the first time, you heard it here first, folks.
We'll look at that one some other time. Okay. Macaroni and cheese became a nationwide sensation during this time because it was cheap, filling, and required very few ration points to produce. General Foods, or Kraft, sold some 50 million boxes of its macaroni and cheese products during the war. So just like what happens now, when the government would announce a new item was going to be rationed, people would just flood the stores and like buy up all the items off the shelf and hoard them. And then there was a sort of black market trade going on where people would resell those things to other people.
Yeah, that happened with toilet paper in
It
2020.
did. And with
Yeah.
yeast, it happened with yeast also, which is why foods from the Great Depression are coming back into style because a lot of those meals don't include flour or yeast and things like that.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. We made our
Shit's
first
wild.
zucchini bread, I think, at the beginning of COVID.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been the same ever since then. It's the way our society reacts, and since earlier than that, probably. So by the end of the war in 1945, the only thing still being rationed was sugar, and that would continue until 1947. And so you can still see some of the results of those 2 decades of scarcity and rationing in the way our grandparents do things, or at least the way my grandparents do things. But probably a lot of other people's grandparents too. Like during the war, when fat was rationed and most people were doing without it in their diets, it became like a big thing for people to just save fat from the meat that they were cooking when they had meat to cook. So they would cook their meat and then they would pour the fat from the cooking of the meat into a separate jar and just like save the meat fats up to put into other foods later.
Yeah,
My
that's
grandma
still common. Yeah.
It's still common. My grandma does
Yeah.
this with bacon fat and like ham fat and stuff like that.
Like my family growing up didn't do that, but like did that for a little while when I was living in Canada.
Yeah. So good. Yeah.
I used to save my bacon fat in a separate container because I was told I needed to, and also because I grew up so far below the poverty line that I felt the need to hoard every item of food I ever had, which my grandma also does. So I just learned it from them, and then eventually I was financially stable and decided that saving my bacon fat was weird, so I stopped doing it. It's not
It's
weird
not a
because
necessity.
you can cook things with it. It's not a necessity.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if it's something that, can help you save money, it's not weird. But also, like, if you just do it because, that's just something you do, it's not weird. It's all right. I think we have a jar of bacon fat somewhere. I probably need to toss it, though.
It's probably been aged.
You can do a lot of things with bacon fat. We use bacon fat when we're already cooking with bacon. We'll usually pour the fat like back into the container, like back into the skillet when we're cooking like the potatoes that go with the meal or like the vegetables or whatever.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, it's really good because we then you don't have to put oil in with the vegetables or whatever because the fat from the bacon is already naturally oily. Like it's already the grease. You don't have to put more grease.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
and like saving bones to make your own broths and things like that. My grandma has a hard time throwing food away, even if it needs to be thrown away. So like she might hoard canned goods past the point where they are actually usable. You can save canned goods for a really long time, but they do eventually expire, and she keeps them forever, even when she shouldn't.
My dad, he does anytime like uh anytime they get like a rotisserie chicken from like the store, he'll like save the bones and he'll make chicken noodle soup from them. And then he does the thing with ham bones after Christmas or Thanksgiving. He'll
Hawk soup.
yeah, yeah. He's like, you can make a really good broth with it. Throw some beans in there, a little bit of. He's like, you have your leftover ham, just toss that in there. He's like, tomatoes. I'm
Yeah.
like, nom, 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 nom.
Your dad and my grandparents are the same age, so they do a lot of similar
Yeah,
things, it sounds like.
yeah.
Yeah, my grandma will hoard food in a way that is unnecessary in the now, but she just does it. She she grew up during the tail end of World War II with her grandparents or with her parents rationing things, and she just
Hmm.
lived through it.
Yeah. I mean, my grandma, she grew up well below the poverty line as well, and so a lot of the behaviors that she had learned, like in the Great Depression, all that, she passed down to my dad. So he's just like, "Yep, makes sense." It's they weren't. I don't think they grew up like super poor family, my dad's side, but uh, they weren't wealthy. They
Yeah.
saved a lot of money because my grandma could ration.
We didn't have a kitchen or a good working refrigerator, so we just made a lot of soups
Mm,
and spaghetti on top of the wood stove. So the things that we rationed in my house were canned foods. Uh, like we did a lot of rationing of canned goods. We just sort of piled them up.
mm, damn, dude.
It is. So this sort of thing leads to a feeling after the war of being fed up with the food scene. So soldiers return home after being exposed to like foods from all over like various countries and cultures, and this created in them a yearning for more adventurous food choices. And then thanks to higher salaries post-war, it became sort of more of a like chance at being a reality. And this was when the Jell-O food craze happened. I think we've all seen the pictures or the YouTube videos or the TikToks about the Jell-O food with the gelatin or the aspic with veggies or meat or whatever just wobbling in there.
Mm,
Those foods, those dishes were super popular from the 50s up to the 70s.
God, a whole like generation.
Yeah, a whole generation.
Maybe that's why my mom's food tastes are weird. Because my mom was born in 55.
So these things, I put a
Oh,
picture.
hey, first layer, first bottom layer, the base layer is a green jello with shrimp floating in it.
Yeah,
Shrimp. Like big jumbo shrimp, guys. Jumbo shrimp. And then the next layer on top of that is one of those classic jello shapes, like a bunt or like a fancy the crystalline looking ones. And it's got tomatoes, chopped tomatoes,
Is that what that is?
peas, and what are those at the top? Are those still more tomatoes, or don't tell me it's a fruit?
I think they might be chopped in half tomatoes or they might be a fruit.
Because I'm thinking they might be strawberries, but I'm gonna tell myself that it's more tomatoes.
You don't want all your meals in one?
It's so unpleasant.
So these things became popular during this time for a number of reasons. One, in the early 1950s, refrigerators were still quite expensive. So, because like I just said, they were like $3,000 ish. So the gelatin needs refrigeration in order to set. So in a way, preparing a Jell-O mold was something of a status symbol. Also, it's worth noting that gelatin molds and gelatin date back to the 1700s. So it's always been a status symbol because back then in the 1700s, when Jell-O, or sorry, 1600s, 17th century, 1600s, when elaborate molds and gelatin, which was super duper expensive, super hard to make, these were seen as like to showcase wealth. So this notion was nothing new. Like the idea that having like a super fancy Jell-O dish set out at your party or at your dinner was like, look at me, how fancy I am. I can afford Jell-O.
Jeez. Kind of like an ice sculpture, huh?
Yeah, kind
But
of.
edible. Ugh,
So,
I hate that.
so way back in the
Jell-O.
1600s, somebody puts out a big fancy Jell-O mold worth of gross food, and all the way up in the 1950s, somebody else is doing it, connected through time.
I'm gonna
It's so
tell myself.
romantic.
Oh God. I'm gonna tell myself that like the 1600s folks, they were like, yeah, make it sweet though. Make it sweet and put
Oh,
like fruit inside.
Karen.
Oh no, please.
Karen.
Get
No.
wrecked.
I want you to know that in the 1600s, putting sugar in it would have been way more expensive and taken way longer to do, and so they were almost never sweet.
No. I hate it here.
I actually have a little paragraph pulled up that describes how to make the Jell-O if you want me to read it, but I didn't know if you wanted me to read it.
I absolutely do want you to read it, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Take out the bones of 4 calves' feet and put the feet into a pot with 10 quarts of water, 3 ounces of hartshorn, 3 ounces of isinglass, which is the sturgeon's swim bladder,
Mm.
a nutmeg quartered, 4 blades of mace. Then boil this till it comes to 2 quarts and strain it through a flannel bag. Let it stand 24 hours. Then scrape all the fat from the top very clean. Then slice it and put to it the whites of 6 eggs beaten to froth. Boil it a little. Strain it again through a flannel bag. Then run the jelly into little high glasses. That's how you make it. It takes more than 24 hours to make it. Just the like boiling, hardening, scraping, boiling again, and so on and so forth. And then it says if you want to, you can add orange flower water or wine or lemon. And it said, but this is fancy enough at the end.
But this is fancy enough. let's be real. You don't need to impress your friends any more than this, do you?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
So very few people bothered to make gelatin in the 1600s unless they had a large enough kitchen with a large enough staff to bother to take the hours to do the work, because it took hours to prepare the calves' hooves and to like crush up the swim bladders of the sturgeons and mix it all together and do the boiling and so on. It just took a lot of effort, and the resulting gelatin was like brown and nasty looking.
No.
Not like the
Why?
not like the nice jelly that we have now.
Why would they eat this though? Like, whose idea was this to do all of these steps to
I'm so
eat
glad you
it?
asked. I actually have this information.
Oh my god. Please tell me.
Okay, let me open that timeline up.
Oh boy.
In 1682, a Frenchman named Denis Papin, or Papin probably, recorded his research experiments on the subject. Yeah, that
Okay,
guy.
is he like a food scientist?
Just like some guy.
Why is he doing this? What is his occupation? Or is this his hobby?
He was a physicist, mathematician, and
Okay.
inventor.
All right.
He invented the steam digester,
That's Jell-O.
which was the forerunner of the pressure cooker,
Oh,
and also of the
okay.
steam engine.
Oh.
So this man's work both was the forerunner of both the pressure cooker and also the steam engine.
Way to go,
Jell-O.
Monsieur Papon.
Yeah. So in
Jell-O.
1682, he was doing some experiments, and those experiments resulted in a method of removing the glutinous material from animal bones by boiling the bones. He wrote down that it had no taste, no odor, and when combined with liquid, no color, but was filled with protein. His quote said, "A jelly made of bones of beef," was what he called it.
Hmm.
I mean, that's how we still make Jell-O.
Yeah, this was while he was testing the first pressure cooker.
Ah.
Wow. All right.
So that's how we got Jell-O. So it was almost never sweet back then either. It was less. It was sweet less of the time then than it is now.
It's way
So-
better sweet. Way better sweet.
But I said that it probably wouldn't come up in the episode, but I guess this is actually a good place to put it because now we're talking about the flavors of the Jell-O. But the original flavors for the Jell-O are orange, lemon, strawberry, and grass were the first flavors that Jell-O came in.
Oh, that's... Why grass? Why?
Because grass tastes good, bitch.
No, you're wrong.
I'm correct.
You're wrong. I will die on this hill.
Then die.
Grass is for cows.
Cows love this shit, bro. It's
Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah, because they're cows.
I also eat cow things. I chew cud all the time.
That's besides the point.
Okay, so
I'm not going to argue with you on the merits of cud, but I will argue with you on grass.
Grass is
Grass.
delicious. Have you never had the grass flavored jelly bean?
That's why it's terrible.
It's delightful.
It's awful.
that is the least offensive of those weird jelly beans.
I love the grass jelly bean.
Anytime I get matcha something, I'm like, no, I don't like this. It tastes like grass, and I don't like grass.
Grass is delicious.
This is a very divisive topic that might destroy our friendship.
Okay,
Alright, dude, I'll start packing.
we should move away from it then before I've irreparably damaged the two of you's relationship.
I honestly don't care. I mean, I just don't like grass, but I know that other people really enjoy it, so go for it. As long as it's not going to kill you.
Eat grass.
Yeah, eat grass.
Okay.
Your ass is grass, and I'm going to mow it. That's not mine. Don't worry.
Okay. Number 2, molds were so popular and featured in so many cookbooks that many home cooks simply accepted that they were a desirable thing to make, so they also made them. Peer pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Then people just sort of consider them fun to prepare. Now, I've made Jell-O, and I cannot imagine Jell-O being fun to make, but whatever.
What?
And I would find it very tedious to layer all this stuff into Jell-O, but again, whatever.
Oh, it is kind of fun.
Then you would be a housewife that liked to make these things, I guess, in the 1950s.
Whoa. Hang on now. I would not say that. I just think that it's kind of fun to make rainbow Jell-O things.
And they were considered an inexpensive way to make a main dish by using primarily canned goods and leftovers. It's also important to note that using Jell-O as a medium to hold your veggies and meat isn't like a new idea for the 50s. They also did that in the 1700s too. They shoved all sorts of things in there in the 1700s. They didn't just eat the beefy flavored Jell-O. They put stuff in it too back then. We're literally just copying 17th century. I keep saying 1700s. 17th century. We're just copying what they were doing back then.
Now we're copying what we did in the 50s.
So, in the 30s, during the Depression, they invented the lime Jell-O so that they could use the lime Jell-O as a complementary flavor for savory meals, and made whole cookbooks devoted to lime Jell-O and its application in savory cooking. because it was seen as a flexible food to add bulk to a meal. And then so by the 50s, when people were looking for exciting foods after their rationing years, Jell-O was not new in the savory food scene in the United States, but it was like there to take up the challenge, the same as it had been doing for a long time, just in a new way. Some of the issues with cooking in the 50s had to do with the pressures put on women as housewives at the time. There was an intensity to what they were being asked to do that was like more than what they had been doing before, like before the war happened, because like during the war they were all off doing like jobs and things, and then they came home, and either some of them were still working full time and then still being expected to also be a full time housekeeper and cook and parent and so on, or they quit their jobs and now they were stuck at home all the time when they had previously been able to go out and do things that they hadn't been able to do before. Either way, they were like just doing a lot of stuff or not doing a lot of stuff, and it was just kind of awful.
Yeah. I can't imagine being in that time period. It fucking sucked.
Yeah.
I'd be just straight up fucked.
Yeah. And so other people, like other women of a certain type, scorned other women for taking shortcuts while cooking and not like cooking a full like home cooked freaking meal every single freaking day, for spending hours in there and cooking like everything by hand. And so some people like compromised with this and were just like, Jell-O is an easy way to take shortcuts in the kitchen and just use a bunch of canned goods and then just shove them inside some Jell-O and nobody's gonna know the difference.
Jeez, Janet, some people can't, stay at home and make a 4-course meal. Some of us have to take our kids to school, go to the cannery, come home, pick up the kids from school, come home, make, some form of dinner, and then take care of everything else while, Jeb is sitting on the couch with his feet up, drinking his PTSD away. All right, Janet? God. Sorry, pisses me off.
You just channeled the spirit of an angry housewife, bro.
I mean, women being mean to other women for, not doing housekeeping or homemaking the right way just makes me so angry. I'm like, shut up. You don't know their life.
Yeah. It's stupid.
Just because I have like so many feelings about like expectations and the amount of energy that is like you can have like 50 spoons, whereas maybe Alice has like 10 spoons. All right? It's just, people can handle different things and they handle them differently.
Yeah. I would probably make Jell-O food if I was a house person in the 1950s, because if I stand for very long trying to cook food like of a home cooked variety, my knee hurts incredibly bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just uncan a bunch of stuff, and either my husband was going to deal with it, or I would just be shoving it into a fancy Jell-O mold, and you'd never know. So
there you go.
You eat your Jell-O food. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the mold makes it look nice. So.
And that's the point. The mold makes it look fancy. So they looked at the flavor of the Jell-O as a compliment to what they were cooking also. So, like, for one thing, Jell-O made savory flavors during the time. Here's a picture of some celery-flavored Jell-O for salads, the box says.
Well, that makes more sense.
I just don't like the idea of gelatin-textured vegetable.
I can make peace with this.
The Jell-O texture is would be really horrible coating my meat. Like if I ate a bite of meat surrounded by Jell-O, I would hate it. But that's a texture thing. At least if the Jell-O wasn't sweet, I could deal with the flavor. It's the texture that would then be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, like this picture right here is this one is made with lemon Jell-O. Now, what this is a picture of. What this is a picture of is lemony salmon tower And what's in this picture? It says tart, shimmery lemon gelatin accents rich salmon flavor in this luscious molded salad. It has cucumber, celery, green pepper, and that adds crunch, the ad tells me. Relishes are anchovies, herring, and sour cream, marinated shrimp, sardines, pickled beets, and pickles. So that's all the stuff that's sort of with this Jell-O. What's inside the Jell-O is like all the salad components and the
I
fish.
don't. And the fish. Oh, God. Ugh.
And I also had this picture saved, which is
Now
like
Now's
it's
the
a,
time
time
for
for
Jell-O
Jell-O
salads, bro.
yep. Don't let a week go by without serving one, it says on the bottom. So this has got
Ah,
Ugh.
this has got like inside of the Jell-O is like olives and what cheese or something. I don't know what's in there. And tomatoes.
Red pitted olives. I was thinking it's either cheese or pineapple and tomatoes. God. Oh, that's awful. Ugh.
Yep. So I talked to my grandma about this a bit when I first added this item to our list of topics, and she didn't want to talk about it very much. She's probably trying to forget the horrors of having to eat this stuff, but she remembers eating a lot of dessert Jell-O items, because that's all she wants to remember, I guess. And she enjoyed a lot of those, and she remembers very vaguely eating like Jell-O actual meals that had like the meat and things, but like most of what she remembers is the Jell-Os with like tomatoes in there, and doesn't really remember meat stuff being inside of her her Jell-O. Um, but she remembers other like relatives that had it. But she grew up outside of a city. Where she grew up was like in the house that I grew up in, so that was like outside of a city limits, like up in the mountains, deep in the woods, isolated in a house all alone with no neighbors anywhere nearby. Like
Mm.
so she was like far removed from the kind of place where making fancy Jell-O dinners was really a necessity. Her dad was like a farmer, and her mom like just raised 9 kids and had no time to be bothered caring about what people thought about the foods that was being made.
Mm-hmm.
So they just ate
no
Yeah.
simple
keeping up with
foods.
the Joneses to worry about.
No, nobody was nearby. Whoop. So in the end, like the dish looked like it took a long time, so husbands or mothers-in-laws wouldn't be judgmental about it, but the wife could spend her time doing any number of other things she was expected to do. And the Jell-O craze lasted up to the 70s, when people like switched and decided that they didn't want to consume that much sugar anymore, and so they just didn't want to do that anymore. And Jell-O combated the new like desire to not eat so much sugar by making sugar-free Jell-O.
There
but
you go.
but then people were like, no, we just don't want to eat Jell-O food anymore.
Yeah.
So and then it just sort of fell out of favor, and we stopped doing Jell-O foods. Now if you want to try a savory Jell-O meal, you can
Why?
find a lot of recipes out there floating around on the internet. And if one of you listeners eats a Jell-O meal or has eaten a Jell-O meal, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, send us a message if you've eaten a Jell-O meal, or if you make a Jell-O meal inspired by this episode.
Yeah, send us a message.
Yeah.
If you
Tag
don't
us.
tag us, if you don't want to eat a Jell-O meal by yourself, but you want to watch somebody else doing it, I like B. Dylan Hollis on TikTok and YouTube. TikToks are for short, snappy videos. YouTube, he does like really long videos where he talks through everything he's doing. And his foods are like generally the 1970s down, but most of his foods seem to be around the Depression era, but he's done stuff from up in the Jell-O era. And then there's another one on TikTok called Retro Recipes Kitchen, and they have done a lot of Jell-O foods. A bunch.
Mm. Well, I'm gonna not eat Jell-O, and maybe pudding. Pudding sounds good, but also maybe just cake. Maybe I think something solid. Something solid would make my stomach feel a little better.
But thanks everybody for listening. We are very excited to take your questions too, because we want to hear them and we want to answer them, and we are so super qualified to answer questions. So what you can do is you could visit our website, which is whywouldyouskthat.com, and go to that little contact form, throw in a question, or you can email us at whywouldyouskthatpod@gmail.com. So please send us your questions. We don't care how weird it is, how gross it is. Just don't ask any personal questions. That's our one line. Ask your weird questions. That's what we want. So thank you for listening. This is M, Karen, and Remy, and ask us some shit. Thank you. Good night.